Hi, everybody. My name's Matt, and I like comics. And today we're going to do part two of my Action Comics Legion series. We're going to pick up, if you'll recall, we had finished with Action 384, which was 8 issues. The first 8 issues, we covered the first 8 issues of the Legion series, and by accident, another issue that we will cover today. And I will actually put the proper um, description in with when then we actually get there. So we're going to pick up today with the issue from February 1970, Action Comics 385. This is a cool cover showing Superman yet again breaking chains. Yet again, kryptonite doesn't affect him. But in this case, he's considered immortal. And but again, we're not covering the Superman story. I just think that this is a great cover. This one is actually Neil Adams on Kurt Swan, I believe, because it's definitely Kurt Swan's style, but the inking is not Murphy Anderson's. So in this issue, Saturn Girl and Starboy and Colossal Boy go to Starboy's home planet of Xanthu to try and stop a criminal organization from stealing a bunch of the government's most important treasures. So they get there to find out that the pirates are showing up, and the pirates manage to get away. They seem to anticipate everything that the Legionnaires are doing, all of the security precautions, because sure enough, they discover that the pirates are Naltorians, like Dream Girl, where they all have the power to see the future, precognitive abilities. Specifically, though, what they don't know is that the leader of the gang is the brother of the man Starboy killed back in issue 342 of Adventure Comics. And if you've never read that issue, Starboy kills the man who tries to kill him because he's jealous that Starboy has won the love of Dream Girl and he wants her. Crazy what happens in the teenage world in the future, isn't it? They just seem to be so advanced in things. However, anyways, Starboy eventually comes back into Legion, as we all know, and but here we got the brother that wants revenge. So he tries to kill Starboy. He manages to kidnap Starboy, get him alone, and kidnap him, and attempts to kill him. Well, Starboy manages this time to actually use his power correctly and not resort to killing this time. But even though he manages to stop that guy, the rest of the gang stop and get the drop on him, and they're about to shoot him when suddenly Colossal Boy and Saturn Girl show up to save Starboy, and they all manage to win the day. The reason the Naltorians were getting away with it because not only were they precognitive, they were wearing telepathic blocking helmets, so Saturn Girl wasn't able to find out where they were. And the advantage of Starboy being kidnapped was, since he didn't have a helmet, she was able to zone in on him and find out where they were, and able to defeat the gang in the end. Next up, we have issue 386. This one is an actual callback to the earlier issue where there was an imposter that acted like Shadow Girl. That girl has been released from prison at this point for good behavior. So what's the first thing she does? She goes right back to crime. She manages to defeat a bunch of Legion members as well as Night Girl by using a device that turns their powers on themselves. So once so she draws them out into a final battle by taunting them, because that always works in comics. And so they meet in battle. The villain manages to escape in the battle in space and gets to Earth. Phantom Girl has managed to hide on this ship. So when they get to Earth, Phantom Girl is able to tell Brainiac 5 where they are. once they get there, they're really wondering how they're going to defeat this person because their powers are being turned on themselves. And it turns out all it needed was a little punch by Ultra Boy. Just a regular, silly little punch. Boom, she's defeated, and the day is won. Next up, Action 387. Okay, this is another one of them, the life of Brian stories, so to speak, a day in the life. Okay, so the Legion gets summoned by the president's people to tell them that they're going to lose their tax exempt status because they have 26 members, and even though they're a club, they're considered a private club, and anybody over 25 members gets taxed. So basically, they sit around and like, I'll quit. No, I'll quit. I'm useless. Meanwhile, Superboy gets up and leaves. Superboy decides to be the member to quit because his powers are the same as Mon-El's and Supergirl's, and he doesn't want Supergirl to quit because at the time she is involved heavily with Brainiac 5, and he doesn't want to interrupt that romance because she's actually starting to spend a little more time with the Legion. Although that's not really reflected in the books. If there's one thing that I don't understand about Supergirl's membership, if I may say this, Supergirl and Superboy are both considered to be long functioning, helping regular members of the Legion. And we see Superboy a lot, but we barely ever see Supergirl. We only ever seem to see her when in what I call female centric stories, where the stories are on the girls, or in some of the earlier ones when the rest of the Legion loses their powers, or it's huge events like the Great Darkness where they bring Supergirl in to do this thing, and you don't see, unlike Superman, where he thinks about his Legion days a lot. You don't really see Supergirl thinking about the Legion much in when she grows up a bit. In fact, you don't see her talking about the Legion much in general. The odd Brainiac 5 gets mentioned, but not a lot happens after that. I do know that it is considered canon. I don't know exactly where. I'd have to dig up one of the issues. But Clark did spend almost a full year as a regular member. And then he went back to seconds after he left the 20th century. And no one seemed to notice he had aged a year, pretty much. As for Supergirl, I don't know what her actual time periods are there been. There is a 2-month period in the sense of the story, not in the later Legion after 300, where she sticks around and her and Brainiac do get a bit serious. But other than that, they don't really get into her service as much. So next up, I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about this cover, because this cover is a great cover. It is an April Fool's Day cover. And I'm going to leave this up for a few minutes because I think it's neat. DC ran a contest with this issue, and it's cover dated May 1970, but it would have come out in April. And they covered, they did an interesting contest where you could win like a couple of sketches from one of the artists. They don't say who in the book, and I don't know if there was ever a winner announced or not. I haven't checked the letter pages, but I do know that this is a hilarious cover. It's great, and I have sat here and stared at it a bit myself, wondering if I could win the contest with it. The Legion story in this book, though, is a reprint of Adventure Comics 302. That's the one where Sunboy loses his powers temporarily, and he can only get his powers back when he's not thinking about it. He's got some sort of mental block. Now, 302 is not an expensive issue. I have a copy of it myself, although I do have Adventure 300 as well, which I talked about in the last. But shh, I have 2 copies. Shh. Anyway, so if you don't have this book, from a Legion's perspective, you're not missing anything from the continuity. But I recommend you get this book because this cover is fantastic. Action 389. This is the story that I explained last by accident in the last video. This is the one where criminals have created a robot that could defeat everybody, and it was defeated by the combination of Chemical King, Cosmic Boy, and Shrinking Violet. I'm not going to repeat it here. Go back and see my oops in the part 1 video, and you will get the full story. Needless to say, this one wasn't the greatest of stories. It feels like, as I said, then it felt like a bit like a filler issue compared to some of the other ones, especially since we've only got 3 issues left at this point in the run. So this is Legion 390, and the Legion story in this issue is the first part of a 2-parter. The planet Latrum has been conquered by an individual who's used a droid army. There's a lot of androids in this little run. I have a feeling that, they didn't have many mercenaries back then. People finally figured out, hey, wait a minute, life is precious. And they get robots instead because they don't need to be fed. They just need to be maintained. But I digress. Okay. This conqueror of Latrum has decided that he wants to conquer other planets. Well, the UP has can't have this, but they can't be seen as interfering into the think of the Star Trek directive. They can't be interfering in planetary politics. Therefore, they asked the Legion to send the espionage squad in. So the espionage squad, led by Chameleon Boy, go in. They manage to look like they're smuggling weapons into a rebel cell, and they manage to fit themselves in. What they do is Chameleon Boy takes over. They knock out and capture one of the leaders of the small group that they meet, and Chameleon Boy takes over as that character, while Saturn Girl goes to be a spy in the headquarters of the dictator. Unfortunately, Saturn Girl is recognized when she comes in by a fellow Titanian. When she gets there, someone she knew back on Titan. And it turns out that this Conqueror is also secretly aligned with the Dark Circle, and the Dark Circle had their debut back in the Adventure Comics run. They will become more important later in the Earth War storyline under Superboy and the Legion, and I think it's 241 to 245. But right now, there's still this little shadowy power that's trying to build up behind the scenes. So we end the story with most of the boy Legionnaires engaged in the rebels, in the rebel camp, and Saturn Girl in the capital. Now, Chameleon Boy is also lucked out that the girl who is the girlfriend of the guy he's impersonating seems to be fooled by his impersonation as well. This is Adventure 391. This is the second part of the same story. In the Action Comics front, we actually have a Super Son story, because the Super Sons were happening in World's Finest at the time. So they sort of had a little bit of crossover here. Now, the second half of the book starts with Brainiac 5, Element Lad, Karate Kid, and Tinderwolf, and Chameleon Boy with the rebels. Element Lad they finally discovered the weapons they have to use against these robots. They can be defeated by pretty much they can't be defeated by pretty much every type of weapon, but they can be defeated by different element changes. So Element Lad has to be the one that has to do the vast majority of the fighting. And let me tell you, as the book goes on during the fight, he gets tired. And by the end, he is completely out of it. There, sure enough, they have the rebel uprising, And the new rebel leader turns out he's just as bad as the old dictator. And then before he can do anything too crazy, they manage to take him over. Meanwhile, they discover the girl from the first part of the story didn't really like the guy very much and liked another guy. So Chameleon Boy is able to walk away from that with no issues. And in the end, as I said, the Legion wins, the rebels win, the planet gets ready for democracy. But again, it seems very the resolution of the story in this seems a little fast because they only had 10 pages to do it in, and they had 13 pages in the first book to set it up, because the second part of the Super Sun story from the previous issue took up the first half of this action book, and it took a little more resolution. So without sitting down and actually reading the two-parter, your best bet is to take both parts, pretend it's one book, read it together. It makes more sense, because I find that they didn't explain a lot in the second half of the story, or they assumed that you knew too much from the first. Like, they made a lot of assumptions, because in the first half of the story, they don't really get into how they are going to fight necessarily. It's just boom, we'll use elements. Seems to be the way they went. This brings us to the last part of the last one. September 1970s Action 392. It also features the wrap up of the Super Sun story from the last couple bits. But in this book, Saturn Girl and Princess Projectra have going back to the headquarters after not doing very well on a mission. Once they get to HQ, the other Legionnaires seem to act as if they're not Legionnaires. So basically, this story is them trying to figure out what is wrong, why the Legion doesn't recognize them. They find themselves powerless briefly, and in the end, they discover that it was a trick after all, because Princess Projectra was being tested to make sure she didn't have some sort of burnout from being overuse. They had some machine where they said Princess Projectra is most likely to break and snap mentally because blah, 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 blah. But because she passed this test, they're like, oh, we'll never use that computer again. Da, 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 da. And that's the end of the Action Comics run. Just like that. We don't see the Legion again for over a year. They make an appearance in Superboy 173, and that's the next time we get a new appearance, because in the meantime, they do print off a Legion of Superheroes 4-issue miniseries, which is the first volume of Legion of Superheroes, which is all reprints from the early the early Adventure days. And so that's all this. So Legion fans were not happy. One, with the change to the Action Comics and becoming half people again, half a feature again. And they wrote a lot of letters to DC, and DC finally relented when Superboy sales, the Superboy magazine sales, started to falter a little bit in mid 1973. They tested out the waters in Superboy 173. Now, they didn't show up again for a couple issues after that, and they started making periodic appearances until Superboy 198, when they finally became full-fledged members of a book again, and the book's title on the cover changed to Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. The book didn't officially change its name to that until issue 238. However, that was the Action run. In the beginning of the run, Karate Kid was the Legion leader, and by the time it ends, in the last story, Mon-El takes over. And he has his only turn as Legion leader. Overall, the stories are okay. Some are better than others. The bad ones are really bad. And the fact that they threw in 2 reprints tells me that they weren't taking this as seriously as they should have. Because I think they misunderstood the amount of people out there that still were reading the Legion in the late 60s, early 70s. Because the Legion seemed to have grown up with its audience. Certainly Jim Shooter, when he was writing it, when he started at 14. And he was still a teen when, and still writing the Legion in the beginning of this run. He did at least half the stories as the writer, if not all of them. I'm not sure. I know that a couple were written by a couple other people, but I didn't take the time because, for brevity's sake, of getting the actual names, because we're already hitting 20 minutes here for this video, and we were all close to 20 in the last. So I will wrap up saying overall I enjoyed this, and you can have almost all these books for relatively cheap, and 6 or 7 of them are Neal Adams covers. So it's always good to have Neal Adams covers from the 60s. He did a lot of Superman and action covers back then, and Superboy as well, and he did fantastic jobs with them. And I just think that the more people that are interested in stuff, it's great. I think it's great for comics overall if everybody has more than one interest. And more than anything, I just want to spread the knowledge and spread the love. Because my name is Matt, and I like comics. And I hope you do too. Please like, subscribe, comment below on any book you may have liked or don't like, or you may have. Have yourself a wonderful day.